Welcome to Menopause the Positive Way, the podcast that inclusively supports Women Plus moving through their menopause journey with greater ease, control, and an empowered mindset. You can subscribe to this series wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by Positive Health, making life easier and helping you make a change for the better. Hello, and thank you for joining Menopause the Positive Way. Today, I, Courtney, am your guest. Today, our host is Dr. Colette Edwards. Hello, Dr. Edwards. How are you?
Good morning, Courtney. And this is going to be an interesting experience for both of us, I believe.
I think we'll have a wonderful time.
So, hi, everybody. I'm Colette Edwards, the founder and chief medical officer of Positive Health. And for people who have tuned in before, you can see that we are turning the tables today. I'll be the one asking the questions, and Courtney will be the one giving us the scoop. And since she's always been the host, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a dedicated professional with a passion for wellness. She has a knack for building lasting business relationships. And I can attest to that because we have worked together before. And it was such a great experience that I asked her to be part of the Positive Health journey. She has an extensive background in wellness. She definitely knows how to drive results, and her expertise has been and continues to be invaluable in helping organizations thrive. And besides all that, she actually contributes to the coaching and empowerment of individuals and communities, which makes her a multi-talented asset to the Positive Health podcast experience. So, Courtney, so glad to have you with us this morning. And you'll have to give me a grade at the end of our conversation.
Perfect. Will do.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions, as you might imagine. So let's get started. And the first one would be, just tell me something about what your personal menopause journey has been like so far.
Sure. So I've really been aware of this journey for the past, I would say probably 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years. And maybe aware really isn't the correct word for it, but maybe on the journey for the past 8 to 10 years. I believe it started, as my kids were in the middle of being, middle-aged of 8, 9, 10, and thinking that I was going through changes in my body, in my life, but not really able to pinpoint what they were. I can remember, with my well-being background, I've always been a very proactive person, very preventive. If you say follow this lane, I'm following the lane. If you say book the doctor's appointment, I book my preventive every year. I do all that. That's just kind of ingrained of who I am as a person. And I can remember talking to my doctor, and my doctor I've had since I was 12 years old. So I've been extremely lucky to have somebody on my side that knows my ups and downs, or, he delivered the kids. It's been wonderful. I've been very, very lucky to have him in my corner. But I think as my age started getting a little bit older, we really weren't pinpointing menopause. It felt maybe that I was going through either depression or anxiety. I felt foggy at times. I felt tired at times. I wasn't getting sleep at times. And I thought it was just life. I thought that was, as a woman, that's just kind of what you went through at those ages. And then things started to change physically. I remember being at work and, being in the restrooms or having to make sure that I was always equipped with feminine products as, those accidents happen. And I thought that was very strange at an older age and not really knowing the education behind it, and feeling very tired, feeling very bloated, and having some feminine accidents. And I didn't feel that was right. So I knew at this point I really needed to advocate for myself. And I had taken a trip. I had gone out to visit a family member, and we were out, and he was making a a phone call, and I was doing my things downstairs, and I was kind of overhearing what he was saying, and I kind of kept going, wondering what he was doing or what he was talking about, and I kept hearing these valid statements, these, oh my gosh, check, that's what I feel. Check, that's what I feel. Check, that's what I feel. And so when I was done, I went upstairs and I said, what do you do? I was kind of shocked at as I was hearing this. And he said I'm a compound pharmacist and I specialize in women and peri through postmenopause on this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in menopause. Like it just wasn't clicking. I was doing all the well-being things. I was making sure I was moving my body. I was eating healthy. I was doing this. I had gone through my yoga training at that point. I felt very in tune, but I didn't know how my body was making this change. So luckily we chatted some more. We got back with my doctor. I was able to get with a compound pharmacist and we took our labs from there. It was very interesting to know that there are different labs that you take to test where you were in menopause. I didn't know that. I just thought that we did the annual physical. Maybe they could see it from there. Little did I know it was, best money ever spent to really understand where I was, not only for my own education, but to know that that's where I was at, that something wasn't wrong per se with me, that there was options that we could look at, there was discussions we could have, there were things that I could increase or decrease or just work at. And that felt better to me because I didn't feel depressed. I didn't feel, I felt like I was managing a lot of those things, but it was due to something that I couldn't put my finger on. So since then it's been a journey through that, right? Within the work system, within the life system, within and each of those ecosystems are different, from home life to work life to physical life. And so really trying to work together through that. And everything's gone up and down as I would expect it to now that I knew that that's what it was. I ended up having a partial hysterectomy just about a month before COVID hit. So I got it in. It
Wow.
was like February 12th. So literally, I think I gave it to myself for my 45th birthday. I think that's what it
What a
was.
gift.
Yeah, and it was a gift. And so my recovery from that, I was physically active prior to that and really just stayed with that. And that has made such a change. And again, as we monitored through that and really worked with my pharmacist and coach through that, it was so helpful. And I felt just the difference, really addressing it that way. So there were still other things because even on the podcast I've talked, there is no litmus test on the outside to understand what's going on. So it's hard to pinpoint it when it's all internal, and so there's been ups and downs again as it is. I wouldn't expect it to be so simple, especially with the education and the talking and all the stuff that I've done prior to this. And so really just wanting to shed my conversation around it as well and help women understand it and let them know that they're not alone, that there's all these different alternative medicines and thought processes and things to explore in this avenue. And it's really made me feel like such a well-rounded woman in this
Interesting.
journey.
Okay.
It hasn't been
That's an
anything.
unusual, you don't really, I would say this is the first time I've heard someone express it in that way and view it as the journey making her more well-rounded. You brought up something before in terms of, people looking at others from the outside. And I think that happens with a lot of women, which can be isolating because from the outside, maybe everything looks fine. And there's all the inner turmoil in addition to all the symptoms. And something that dawned on me when you brought up your kids was, do you think your kids noticed, or did they say anything then, or have they since that time?
Yeah, no, I think they could tell I was tired. Like we kind of joke that 7:30 is my pumpkin time, and it was 7:30. I was done. I was in bed. That's the time that mom shut down. That's the time she was exhausted. And I would just go up to my room, and they would watch TV with me when they were younger a little bit, and then especially the youngest one, he would be with me a lot. But I don't think that they really understood that. And I can remember, and I feel like this will resonate with some women because it's kind of the truth, and it's kind of been what's been said in many years prior. And I think that it hurts women is that when the husband or the partner is like, oh, she's just crazy,
Right.
or this is, and that was even before I knew what was going on. I didn't want that feeling, like that wasn't, that I didn't like that.
Right.
I had been going through therapy and other stuff that I've gone through in my life, and I wasn't crazy. I was tired. I didn't know what was wrong, and internally we might kind of have that inner monologue, like, what's going wrong? I feel crazy. But for somebody to say that about me, I didn't like that. That wasn't what was going on. So I think throughout the journey, they really haven't, I don't think they've noticed, the later part, or maybe since I have two boys, maybe they're
Right.
more like, ooh,
Right. Yep.
so, right. So I don't think that that's something, yeah. So I think they will recognize it maybe
In
when they have a
retrospect.
spouse. Yes, in retrospect, when they have a wife or they see that. But I believe my husband at the time then understood what was going on and not deemed it as me being crazy once we really got talking to the doctor. And then he started charting some things, and he started making notes. And there would be times that we'd be talking and he'd be like, yeah, I think it's time for you to go revisit the doctor again. Maybe your things are off, And fair enough. If somebody from the outside is noticing that, maybe that's a good notice, right? Maybe
Right.
that's a good on the outside barometer. And that did help quite a bit because it did lead me to the decision of that hysterectomy, that partial hysterectomy. And it was a better decision for me, for our family. I wasn't going to have any more kids. I was very grateful for what my body had given me. We were at the stage where if that's what's going to make me feel better, and with that came that I had fibroids as well. And there were two that were in there, and one was
Yeah.
like the size of a softball, and one was the size of an orange. And so
Which was
on
contributing to the accidents for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just thought that that's what the body was doing. And, because they hadn't seen the fibroids prior. And again, that added to feeling the bloat, feeling the weight gain. And I'm a pretty tiny little girl, so a woman. And so with that on there, I think what they were saying was my uterus was at like coming out as a 27 or 28 in size, which I believe that's right around where you're about 4 to 5 months pregnant. So there was a lot of feeling in
Yeah.
that, and heaviness, and, not being able to do many things. And I was coaching tennis at the time. So, there's times that I would hit a serve and you would just feel everything and have to run off the court. And that just was, it was impeding my daily life and daily, um, mindset of things. Like I was always pretty worried. I was also catering at the time a lot too, on top of work during the day and the kids and all these things. So there was a lot of heavy lifting. There was a lot
Yeah.
of, and
Okay.
so it was really affecting what I was doing each day, and the nervousness of not knowing what's going to happen.
Okay. So, in addition to the physical and emotional symptoms that you've had, I'm curious to know, did you have any shift in your identity and how you thought about yourself? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been, if I'm looking in a rear view mirror about this part, it's been one of the most beautiful journeys of womanhood. I feel so much in my womanness now. And I think I'm on the tail end of this. And I believe that everything that kind of shifted in my life shifted during menopause. And I think the curiosity and the owning and the advocating and the understanding and the grace and the kind of getting through the symptoms. It was something that I was going through, and it was something that I would either be kind of feel defeated, or when the days were good, I felt so good and felt those steps and felt like bring on the heels, bring on the let's go conquer the world today. I'm feeling great. It kind of had those ups and downs about it. But like right before I would say I had my surgery, I made sure for the month and a half, 2 months that I was going to yoga almost every night, very slow, very gentle, very just making sure my body would move, so that after surgery that I was taking good care of it and that it would go. But also, I did I went and said goodbye and thank you, and really to my female parts and my uterus and my ovaries, and just thanked them and took that time. And I know that might sound a little to the left, but it was like I put that closure with them and thank them for giving my children, and thank you for everything, and the the feeling of being that's what us we are women, because a lot of these of that, right? Like we're differentiated from men because we have these parts and we have this system. And I was able to bring just the best kids in the world here. And I felt so honored. And and I think that connects with because I've lost my dad and my brother. And so
Mhm.
to have them, it was just this beautiful gift that my body was able to give not only me, but my community and whoever these kids touch in their lives. And so I really thanked my body for that and put the closure on it myself. And then afterwards, I did some Reiki and had my Reiki. Well, I believe we've talked about Reiki on our podcast and energy and that, and really had them put energy where that those female parts were coming out. Put love, put energy, put and mentally, I thought through the processes we've talked about. Visualization. I put love back in that area. So after that, and my recovery was very well. On top of COVID shutting the world down, I was able
Right.
to gently walk and be at home from work, and that kind of what happened with that time period. So everything had gotten slow. So I was really able to dial that down, but take good care of myself as well. But I was thankful for that, and I think that that helped with the recovery process. Now, I had really bad night sweats for probably about 8 to 10 years. Terrible. Like I felt like I did not get sleep. And just recently, I would say since this summer, I've seen them go away, and I wonder just with everything with life and where I am with life, and that possibly the ending of menopause and the regulations of my hormones that I'm on. I think, I'm on the tail end and feeling this second side of life. I just turned 50 in February. And so I feel like I've got this new life ticket waiting to happen. And as a woman in full sense of who I am and what I want to do with life and who I want to be with and how I've showed up and motherhood and who I am as a friend and who I am in people's lives and kind of the cutting of the fat per se. I've really enjoyed this evolution of who I am and my voice and my participation within well-being and thought processes and therapy and all the kind of stuff that I took the time out to try to tap into.
Well, an early happy birthday.
Thank you.
Um, so it sounds like some people do experience grief around the transition,
Hmm.
grief in terms of what they might have been able to do in the past, and things that are more difficult or they just can't do anymore. Grief if they always wanted children and were not able to. And now for sure that is behind them, except in, the rare instances when some people leverage amazing scientific technology. And then just a sense of losing themselves and not being the same person. But it sounds like with your experience, which I think was even more unique than every unique journey that is menopause for women, that your background, your general mindset, your general optimistic outlook on life made a big difference, and you got ahead of any grief that you might have felt in honoring what you were letting go of.
Yeah, there were definite times where I did have the grief. And I think that was holding on to where I was in the moment or what I thought life was going to be, or, definitely before the surgery, of course, I thought, oh gosh, am I making the right decision? And there was sadness. There was sadness of that closure of my life. And I do have dear friends that are on that other side, that have dealt with the grief, and not even dealt with the grief. I don't even mean to say that. I mean, are grieving due
Mm-hmm.
to that they aren't going to have children, or it's just a different part of life. They're not ready yet. And so I do hear that, and I do understand that, from personal views and my dear friends. And it's a very hard decision, or a decision that's in
Taken out of your
particular not
hands.
controlled. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there's so many different ways that this comes through in a body, and the feelings in your own, and all of them are valid, right? Because that is your own path and your own life.
Now,
And
during this whole time, did you ever feel that you had lost the essence of who you are?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And I feel that that's part of it, right? I mean, it's a change. You are losing. It's kind of like, when as you get used to change is constant. Change is the constant thing in
Mhm.
our life, right? And so we get to these like landing pads in life, and we can't. It's hard to let go as the things change, and you're like, oh well, gosh, I don't want to let go of that quite yet, because you don't really know what's ahead, or if it's worse, or if it's better, or where it is. But you finally feel like you get your feet on the ground, and all of a sudden things are changing again. And I think, as that stage for me went, was my 20s, and then my 30s, and then having babies and getting married, and all those things, and then all of a sudden those things kind of plateau out. And then what are the next steps? And those next steps were menopause, and there hasn't been a lot of education out, or highlights on this part of the journey. Like, there's there's so much now going on in the past, I would say 3 years, that we're bringing it to light. But 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was a
Mhm.
taboo
Yeah.
subject. You didn't know how to navigate it. You didn't know what to expect. And we might have seen our moms go through it, or not, or, like we were just talking about, in hindsight. So I didn't know what to expect. So the only thing I could grab onto was the unhappy person that was trying to deal with kids, and not, understanding what was going on with my body, or that it was time to change, or, those things. And as I said, I went to my doctor, but, it wasn't an antidepressant wasn't doing it for
Right.
me. That's not what was wrong. And I was trying to do all the, well-being things and all that. And I was doing it, yes, for here, but something was wrong here. So I didn't know how to let go of that to go to the next step. I was only grabbing on to what I knew in my late 20s or early 30s, which wasn't applicable to what I was going in now. So it
Right.
made me feel lost, right? Like absolutely lost.
Now, were there symptoms that you had that I think we have a long, 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 long way to go still in terms of education and
Mhm.
women even being told that this is on the way and here are some things to be on the lookout for? Are there, and for many, and particularly in the workplace, for example, um, do are there symptoms that you have had that, as much as people are going to talk about this, they still don't talk about some of these symptoms as much or as openly?
Yeah, my symptom a lot was night sweats. I had a couple accidents at work. I was bleeding very heavily. There was a couple times I thought I had had a miscarriage
Oh,
at
okay.
work, and was very sad, but come to find out, I believe that it was the fibroids
Uh-huh.
and I did not experience hot flashes, but I think maybe that was the trade-off of the night sweats, and I'm a sleep person. I know how important sleep is. So for 8 to 10 years of not getting sleep, and that really
That,
weighed on who I
yeah,
was.
that's a hard road to travel. No sleep
Yes.
is, sleep deprivation is literally a form of torture. And when you don't have
Yes.
it, you can see why it's effective.
Yeah, and I had it bad, but the only other person that's really being, well, not the only other person, but that's not something that you're seeing in your daily, you're seeing the effects of it, but the nighttime is possibly the person you're sleeping next to, or kind of the household, right? So and I believe that I was very iron deficient because I was bleeding
I
so
was going to
much.
say, which
Yeah.
contributed to the fatigue.
So even though I was eating super healthy, because I had, I think that that's one of the highlights that came from this, is knowing outside, inside of my body, but how I truly felt when I ate healthy. But I knew that I needed to eat healthy because I was being so iron deficient, because, it kind of, all of it begins to start to stack on each other, and especially when you're looking at it as well in hindsight, then you can build it all together, but when you're in it and you don't understand. But yeah, I think that, and then irritability. I was tired at work because I wasn't getting sleep at night, so I felt very foggy. I'm having a little bit more of the fogginess now on the tail end as well. That, again, I think your surroundings also play into that too, and what you've got going on in your life and the stressors in your life. But as
Mhm.
as the shift, I'm feeling it more now, of the brain fog. But yeah, I mean, in the workplace, it was rough. It was rough, and I feel for the women that go through hot flashes during the day. And I think we're bringing that up more. We're talking about it more. We can. There's a little bit more freedom to be like, "Whoa, I'm having a hot flash," and people understand it more as, like, I can remember my mom saying that, when she would have a hot flash, their lips had to, nobody could talk about that. You couldn't just take off, your suit jacket and
Right.
just feel that way. And if you're in meetings, you had to tough through it and that kind of stuff. And, now I think we've got a little more, and there's also the people who say that and go, "Oh, I get it." And I don't think
Right.
that, "Oh, I get it," was a community that was there for others back then. Like, it just was taboo to talk about it. Now, when a girlfriend of mine will be like, "Oh my gosh, I have a hot flash," and I'll take the pad of paper and pen or two, like, "Hey, let's go get a walk. Let's go do something." Try to get her mind off of it. But yeah, there were a lot of workplace times that it was tough, having to run home immediately to change in the middle of a lunch meeting. eh, that's rough. That's rough. And how do you sneak out the door when you're marked? So it's
Yep.
tough.
So if you think through everything that you have gone through and experienced so far on the journey, how would you describe this season of life for you in 3 words?
This season of life or the season of menopause?
This season of life, of your life, how would you describe it in 3 words, given
Oh,
everything that you've experienced so far? And I mean, let's face it, you have the perimenopause, and then that day that is menopause, and then the rest of your life is post menopause. So the journey doesn't end until you end.
right, right.
But for this period of time, how would you describe it?
I would still describe it as feminine,
Okay.
miraculous, and
Okay.
flight.
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 Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, because it really feels, I mean, just off the cuff of my head, it just really feels like going from a baby bird to a bird out of the nest. Like there, and to soar. I think with maybe because I had all the symptoms that I had to really watch, and I felt like I had to minimize or control or be in a certain place or can't do this, can't do that, or manage something different. Like now, with all those kind of behind me, it kind of feels like I've got these wings that have butterfly or bird with these different colors of what I've been through, and to be able to fly as feminine and as a woman, like in the air over. That might just all lead into my spaceship type thinking, but like it's true. I feel, that it's flight now. It's not as like I've gone through it.
I
That
think
I'm
that that
coming out on
is
the other side.
that's fantastic, and it is certainly important, I think, for people to hear the upside, and that there is a positive to what goes on, and that it is not the end of you as a person, that you can be this whole other person if you want to be, or you can be more of who you are and feel less weighed down by societal expectations, and get to the point where you just simply care less about what other people think and start to really focus on you and what you need, which often women don't do a good job of
Yeah.
until they get older.
Yeah, and that's been another part of the transition that I absolutely love is that, like I said a little bit earlier, I was cutting the fat out of it and life, and I've cultivated this strong community of women friends that are in all of this stage, but I really don't care a lot what other people think at this point, like I've got my unit, I've got my heart, I've got my friends, I know what matters to me, I know what I want out of life, and it seems as it's coinciding with this transition. So I don't it may coincide with this transition, but for me, it coincides with this transition. And I've loved who I've become out of this. I love the amount of love and compassion that has come out of this for myself and for others. I feel so strong and steady on my feet as a woman and what I believe in and what I stand up for. And again, I don't think I would have that same voice at 40 or at 35. So if this is one of the byproducts of coming out of menopause, then women, let's go. Like it's a beautiful transition. It truly is, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful that that's how our bodies are set up, and this is what we get to experience. And I know that it's not like that for everyone. But if I can help shed light by these conversations that we're having, or the topics that we're bringing on, or the people we can touch with this conversation, I hope that it starts to bring a little bit of light of maybe where they are or where they're headed or what kind of mindset they can bring into this. Is that it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
So I can't believe how quickly the time has passed. I just have two more questions to
Love
round
it.
us out.
I love it.
So, given that you feel like you're almost on the other side
Mm-hmm.
and about to take flight, for someone
Mm-hmm.
who's just starting the journey, what is one first step that you would suggest that is simple and that they can feel they can actually do?
Mm, that's a good one. Even though you said one, I have like three, but one,
Okay.
one, I would say learn to breathe. Learn to breathe
And you mean that
correctly.
literally?
Literally. Like
Yep.
I know one of the, which I find strange, but this could work into our favor. One of the only times we teach people how to breathe is when they're having a baby. Which I find strange. But learning how to breathe can truly help within what you're going through in daily stressors. Really learning how to get that oxygen down into your lungs and figuring out while you're driving, figuring out while you're in the line of the grocery store, really taking time to center yourself. I think that's something that's attainable. That's something
Yeah,
that we can find on
you have to
YouTube.
breathe, so you might as
Yes,
well do it in a
right.
way that's going to be helpful.
Correct, correct. And people can find how to do that. That's attainable. And that's something that you can do on your own watch, your own time before you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning. It shifts how you see the day, it shifts how you close at night. Even if you do get just a couple hours of that sleep right when you fall asleep for the next 4 hours or so, and maybe the tossing and turning happens from hours 4 to 7 or whatnot. But if you can get a couple of those hours, but breathing before you go to bed will really help daytime, morning. The
Okay,
other
and
one I
then
would, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The other one I would say that I highly recommend, that this might be a little bit further step, is to be able to go get your hormones checked. However you do that, with who you do that one step outside of the preventive care, taking a little bit more detailed um, testing, so helps. It so helps to figure out where you are on that scale of menopause.
Well, and although it's not general testing is not the recommendation for women as a whole on the journey, but it sounds like two things. One, it really did make a difference for you in terms of getting the help that you needed.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who feel a greater sense of control and being and understanding if they do get the testing done, which
Mm-hmm.
is completely different than when you think of an entire population and what is going to be on average the best thing for an individual person. Because once again, the journey is unique. It's going to be different for every single
Right.
person. And I would say that the testing also, I think, is important in the instance where there is confusion or disbelief and an unwillingness to believe about the possibility for people who go through menopause when they're in their 30s,
Mm-hmm.
unless there's some other explanation for it that seems obvious. So just kind of bringing clarity to a situation when the experience is happening at an atypical time, or if there's a lot of overlap between the particular constellation of symptoms and other symptoms that could be totally unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's actually going on, as opposed to your being perimenopausal yet, like thyroid disease, just as an example.
Yeah.
So I would ask you one
Mm-hmm.
last question, which
Mm-hmm.
is one gift that you feel you've been given by the menopause journey that you didn't see coming.
Oh, Well, to be really honest, it's kind of just what we talked about. I
Okay.
care about what I care about, and I don't care
Don't what you
about some
don't.
of the other stuff. Yeah, yeah. And I really like that person. I really like who I am with that. I really like the womanhood that I've stepped into. Like, I feel like a strong woman.
And that
And
comes through in your voice, in your body language, and everything. I mean, it is palpable.
yeah, I really like who I've become, and I'm proud of that. Yeah.
That is quite a statement for anyone to make at any stage of their life,
Right?
and truly a gift.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
So thank you so much, Courtney, for being with me today and getting me through my first go at being a host.
You did
And
wonderful. You did
thank you.
wonderful.
And I think people are really going to enjoy hearing about what you've gone through. And I think it'll be incredibly helpful and insightful for them. So, totally aligned with the person you are,
Oh,
always trying to help others. So, thanks
yeah.
again.
Well, thank you so
Take
much. I
care.
love being on the other side of the microphone today. I love it. I love it. Well, thanks to all of our listeners for joining in. We really appreciate you being here. I hope that shed a little light on your podcast host, and both of us actually. So you get to meet Dr. Colette Edwards and you get me on here on the other side. So we appreciate you all tuning in and listening in, and tune in every month. We've got new podcasts, webcasts coming out. So we really appreciate you all being here, and here's to your continued health.
We are so glad you joined us for this episode of Menopause the Positive Way, and hope you will share this podcast with friends and family. You can subscribe to the series wherever you get your podcasts. Along with this podcast, Positive Health also offers a holistic, one-stop digital health experience supporting your body, mind, and spirit during the menopause journey. If you or anyone you know is looking for guidance, education, and services that address the many symptoms and needs experienced during your menopause journey, you can become a member of our pilot program. And you can join by visiting our positivehealth.com website. That's PAUSITIVE health.com, making life easier and helping you make a change for the better.
This is an educational podcast where the views of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Positive Health. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Positive Health does not provide medical advice.